We all know the famous and historic Browning M2 machine guns, which were so effective that despite being nearly 100 years old since they were developed, they are still in service today. These had a truly excellent performance in the Second World War. The .50 caliber ammunition made them capable of penetrating thick walls and even light armored shields, something that the M1919 infantry machine gun caliber .3006 Springfield could hardly do. But if the M2 was such a good machine gun, why didn't the Germans copy this design and make a .50 caliber machine gun as well? Something like an MG 42 machine gun that used a cartridge similar to the .50 Browning machine gun, as well as the Browning M2 machine guns. In this video, we will talk about the German alternatives regarding high-caliber machine guns. To talk about this and answer this question, we have to travel to the end of the First World War and to the development of the Browning M2 machine gun itself. At this time, tanks had really thin armor. The purpose of these was simply to repel the intermediate ammunition used by the infantry. By the end of World War I, there were anti-material rifles like the Mauser, M19, 18, TGV that with its 13.2 millimeter ammunition could penetrate the armor of almost any armored vehicle of the time, so the idea of a high-caliber machine gun that could penetrate the armor of tanks and planes like the TGV did, and also that could be used in any vehicle, both air and ground, was something really attractive to any army. Planes like the Junker JI, which was an armored ground attack plane, were very problematic to face because intermediate caliber anti-aircraft machine guns could not penetrate their armor. The appearance of armor on planes, as well as the appearance of armored and light vehicles, made the U.S. Army very interested in high-caliber machine guns. In the end, in 1932, this great governmental interest pushed Colt to finish the work that John Moses Browning would leave incomplete due to his death in 1926, the Browning M2, which would be definitively finished for mass production in 1932. The Browning M2 became so cheap that it was omnipresent in World War II. Around 2 million M2 machine guns were manufactured by the end of the war. They were everywhere. They were bolted onto almost every transport or attack vehicle. The Soviets also took this heavy machine gun concept with the Degtyaryov-Shpagin large caliber, which was considerably less produced, barely reaching 1 million units but was equally effective. It was used in World War II as an anti-aircraft machine gun and in defensive positions, so Germany faced machine guns like the M2 on both fronts. And despite their effectiveness, the Germans never used similar machine guns, although they had alternatives to these. The role of multi-purpose machine gun was of course more than fulfilled by the MG 34 and 42 machine guns. They used the 7 92 by 57 millimeters Mauser. So these of course did not have anti-material capabilities, but they had incredible anti-infantry capabilities thanks to their monstrous rates that many times reached 1,500 shots per minute. They were mounted on practically every armored vehicle and was used by the infantry thanks to its ease of use. The Germans, instead of opting for anti-material machine guns, they opted for high-caliber cannons, like 20 millimeters or 37 millimeters. The Germans would develop at the end of the First World War the MG tank Umflinger 13.2 millimeters. Which was practically an enlarged magazine just as Browning did with the M2, only this was 13.2 millimeters and not 12.7 millimeters. Like the Browning M2, however, this project, although promising, would be lost due to the limitations of the Treaty of Versailles at the end of World War I. Germany would not create a machine gun for infantry of a caliber similar to the .50 Browning machine gun, but as we said, they would concentrate on weapons like the Fliegerabwehrkanone, 30 and 38 of 2 centimeters, which were really devastating not only for armored vehicles but for tanks and planes. These were not as mobile as the Browning M2, but in defensive positions as well as mounted on half-tracks or in armored vehicles. They were really fearsome weapons that could destroy any Allied plane, and also they could use any light armored vehicle. The Flak 38 were capable of firing 180 shots per minute and also had an effective range of more than 2 kilometers. There were also quadruple mount versions, like the quad mount of Browning M2 that were seen mounted on the American half-tracks. The German quadruple machine guns were mounted on the German tracks, being a cannon of more than decent caliber to attack armored vehicles. The 2-centimeter caliber Flak had more varied attack roles than the M2, which were only usually used punctually in a defensive manner when they were mounted on armored vehicles. The 2-centimeter caliber Flak were a development from the MG 151, which were 15-millimeter calibers. The Luftwaffe also had a high-caliber machine gun for aircraft, the MG 131, which was a heavy machine gun that featured ammunition of a similar size to the .50 Browning machine gun, being 13 millimeters, but it would only be used in aircraft because it was electrically operated. This made it have a really high rate of about 900 shots per minute, which compared to the 600 shots per minute of the Browning M2, made it exceptionally good. But this made it impossible to use it on land unless there was an electrical power source. The MG 42 and 34 performed well towards the later stages of the conflict, when Germany shifted from an attacking position to a defensive position. The exceptional qualities of the MG 42 and 34 became more than evident. The use of machine guns like the MG 42 by the infantry in defensive positions greatly limited the advance of the Allied infantry. This reduced Germany's interest in developing a heavy machine gun of a higher caliber, which of course would take a lot of development time and money that Germany had limited at that time. The 20-millimeter caliber machine guns, although they did not have as much ease of deployment as the M2 machine guns, these more than met all the needs that the M2 machine guns supplied. In fact, they had greater anti-material capabilities. Also, Germany had a policy of ammunition conservation, basically instructing all machine gun operators to only fire at targets that were worth it. Firing at targets out of range or at targets they could not defeat was simply something that operators of mounted or fixed weapons were instructed to ignore. This could also be another factor that explains how the Germans, with respect to high-caliber anti-aircraft machine guns, preferred machine guns with much higher calibers with low rates of fire to machine guns with calibers close to 12 with medium rates of fire. In summary, German war tactics and strategies gave much more utility to higher caliber machine guns than machine guns like the Browning M2. The German machine guns were more difficult to move and operate, but they were definitely much more fearsome and powerful than the American machine guns. Because of this, we never saw an MG-42 that fired cartridges similar to the .50 Browning machine gun. What do you think about this? Thank you very much for watching this video and see you in the next. Goodbye.